Welcome back to another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Today, I have a very special guest. His name is Georges Janin, and he's the founder of Gringo Jobs. Gringo Jobs helps Latin American engineers, think software engineers, land jobs at US tech startups and guides them through the whole process. So I thought he would be a great person to have on the podcast to talk about what he's seeing in terms of trends with remote work, onshoring, offshoring. I think we're going to cover a lot of stuff. But yeah, George, man, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Vance. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Awesome. And how are things down in Cali, Colombia?
It's great. I've only been here for 2 days, but yeah, I'm doing some salsa classes. So being the clumsy gringo in the back of the salsa classroom. But yeah, it's I've been here a number of times. It's actually a great place to just hang out, do work. It's really cheap compared to other places in Latin America I've been to. So yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, I've heard it's definitely pretty economical. I noticed on your Twitter you had salsa in your bio prior to arriving in Cali a couple of days ago. So this has
Yeah,
been something you've been working on.
I like salsa dancing. I think it's a fun activity. I think people in sort of Europe and the United States and Canada, I guess, are kind of like, my theory is that they're sort of like under danced. Like adults should dance more. Um,
True.
and like basically in Europe, dancing is just something you do to like meet somebody from the opposite sex. And once that's done, you're you're done. You don't dance anymore. Whereas Latin America still does it throughout, so you do it throughout your whole life. And so, yeah, I like doing it a lot. It's just that Cali specifically is sort of the like salsa dancing capital of the world. So, like, if you go to a club that here, the level is just off the chain. Like, you feel very bad when you come in. I mean, unless you're like an excellent dancer. Um,
Yeah,
it's
no, I'm
certainly the
sure it's a big
highest
part of the
level.
culture.
Yeah. It's incredibly. I mean, even everybody dances, and so. But it's a fun place to kind of like it's kind of like going in the deep end of the pool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you got to be good. Yeah, so why don't we kick things off and tell us a little bit about Gringo Jobs and the vision there.
Yeah, of course. So Gringo Jobs is a recruiting agency, and so we focus on connecting Latin American engineers with mostly U.S. Tech companies. And so I mean, I don't know how much. I guess your audience probably knows a little bit about the world of recruiting, but like we are what you call headhunters, which means we like basically charge a recruiting fee for every placement that we make.
Hmm.
And I've been a recruiter. I was a recruiter in New York for like 6 years, and kind of came down actually originally to Mexico because I wanted to see if I could find people to basically wanted to basically wanted to see if I could find Mexican developers who would want to move to the U.S. Using this special visa called the TN visa, which
Yep.
you might know about it since you're Canadian.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I started trying to do that, but then COVID hit, and all like visas or relocations stopped. The silver lining, though, is like all these U.S. companies decided, hey, we're basically kind of remote, sort of for the foreseeable future. There was a big gray area there, but a lot of companies ended up just deciding that that's what they wanted to do. And so suddenly it was like, why are we going to hire some guy, in New Jersey, for I don't know, like 180K a year when we could hire the same guy in Medellin or in wherever Peru for I don't know, like 60K a year. And so then suddenly that was like, okay, this is a big opportunity. And so that's when I switched the name. We became Gringo Jobs. like, and you know, we focus on that. And outside of just recruiting agency, we're also like a decently sized community of most of Latin American engineers and other like digital talent who are
Hmm.
like want to work with U.S. companies, but you know there's a lot of how to say. I think there's some cultural issues, like they need to practice and prepare a bit more than, let's say, your average American for interviewing, and so there's a lot of opportunity to like help them and, you know, give them tips and things like that. So that's basically what Gringo Jobs is in a nutshell. I mean, we're not a huge company. There's like 8 of us in total, and we're yeah. I mean, I think the vision is to keep on riding this remote work wave,
Hmm.
because like that's probably not going to disappear, and then just like keep on expanding it. I mean, I think my at least my theory on this is that remote work, like software engineers, are sort of the gateway drug of remote work, so to speak. Like that's what companies start with. But once they start, there's no reason why they shouldn't hire other types of knowledge worker roles. So we'll keep on growing there.
No, I think directionally makes 100% sense. This is definitely on trend and something that we're seeing more of. Um, and there are like other competitors in the space, or I've definitely seen other tech focused recruiting companies that um, I've never seen one that focuses on Latin America though, but I've seen quite a few that you definitely know the names. It's been a while since I've been on the racehorse of that,
Yeah.
but like you know what I mean. There's like these companies, they'll get you on the phone, you do a job, you do like a coding interview with them, you do a behavioral interview, and they go, cool, like you're good enough at coding, we're gonna shop you to US
Yep.
clients and stuff like that. And then they do it that way, and it's very like merit based, and some of them actually have extremely high standards in terms of like how good of a coder you need to be.
Yep.
Who do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm guessing, just to name a couple of names, I'm thinking like Top Tau. That's a pretty
Yeah, Top
famous
Tau. Yeah, yeah,
one.
yeah.
There's another one called Turing, which I
Mhm.
think mostly works with Indian developers. And then there's
Mhm.
another one called Andela, which works with, I think, mostly African developers. Their models is slightly different from ours, whereas what they do is exactly what you said, right? They do your test or whatever. They make sure you're
They
okay.
vet you. They
They
vet you.
vet you basically, and then they farm you out to a company. They are taking every hour you work, they take a cut. So I don't know exactly what the percentage cut is. The way we operate it, and this is where I think the trend is going. Like we're more like a headhunter model. So I mean, I can give you the exactly how much we charge. We basically charge a fee that's 20% of the candidate's yearly salary. So if we
Hmm.
charge, like, if the guy gets like $100,000 salary, we'll get 20K, and then
Hmm.
that person becomes an employee of that company, and we don't have anything to do with them anymore.
Right. So you're getting there's a term for it, but uh,
Contingency model. That's
yeah,
another.
there's a term for this model because code boot camps have used this model before, where they wouldn't charge the person, and then they'd get a percentage of the salary for usually maybe like 1 year, 2 years. How long is it in place for?
Ah, got it. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So what we do we do like, it's a percentage of the yearly salary, but it's a
Yeah.
one shot deal. Like basically, if it's 100K, we will invoice them 20K. We'll invoice the company 20K within, like after the first month. Um,
Okay, it's like a one-time fee.
it's a one-time fee. You're talking about a relatively new phenomenon that is called income share agreements, where it's like
Yes.
where they like will train you up, and then for like the first year or 2 years, I don't know what, a percentage of what you make goes back to them, but
Gotcha,
they're
gotcha. Okay,
charging
so
the
you're almost
person.
like a traditional recruiting firm. You get your whatever. Let's
Yeah,
just say
exactly. We're super
you get your 10K
traditional.
a pop, and then awesome. But what's interesting is it also seems like there is a bit of a learning dynamic to your onboarding process for
Yes.
the people that you're bringing in, and it makes sense. I can see how interests are aligned because you want them to maximize their salary because then you're maximizing your percentage. So it's aligned.
Exactly.
But yeah, I can definitely see how you can build a bit of a, proprietary process and community around getting people up to, onboarded and accustomed to, U.S. business practices and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And even just stuff like, I don't know, there's so many like things that I think a lot of people in the US or Canada take for granted. But when you're from, Colombia, you might not assume how it goes. And I think the other thing too is that people in general do not like interviewing. Like interviewing is a weird thing. It's a strange process in general to like basically you're having three meetings and then you're deciding whether you want to work for a company or not, and they decide whether they want to work with you. So I think in general there's a bit of an anxiety factor that comes into interviewing. You add the fact that we're often dealing with software engineers who are traditionally not the most sort of like suave talkers,
Hmm.
and then you add on the fact that they're doing this in not their native language. So all those things combined make it sometimes a daunting task. And so it's often nice when they have some content or like some sort of community around them where it can be like, all right, you're in this situation. Here's what you should say. Here's how you talk about like, I don't know, like a job switch that you did or whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I think on average, you'll find that tech people in Latin America, software developers, they're going to have a higher level of English
Yeah.
than the average person. Not only just because of like average level of education, but most tech content is only available in English. Programming languages are only really in English.
Yeah.
Um, and so they kind of have had to learn English, I find a lot of the time,
Yep.
just to like get access to information, even about like crypto and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The level of English of a software engineer in Latin America is orders of magnitude higher than like the average level of English in Latin America, which let's be honest is like it's really low. But yeah, I mean, we always filter out. The way we do it is we always look for people who have there's like a ranking system of English ability, and like B2 was I think proficient, and so we need people who can speak at least
Hmm.
that. I mean, I don't, we don't need you don't need to be like Shakespeare or anything, but as long as they can communicate what they need to do and understand what they need to do, then that's it.
And so are people typically getting hired into full-time positions or into contracts, or what kind of opportunities are available?
Yeah, so I think what the big switch that's happening now is like 5 years ago, most of the jobs were like contractor or near shore consulting firm type things, which is basically like it's a firm, they hire engineers and they farm the engineers out on a project with a client, and then they move them around. That's mostly what software engineering or software engineering jobs have been in Latin America. The big switch that's happening now is that U.S. companies, because they're becoming just fully remote, they're hiring people for full time roles in Latin America. So these are people that will not, that are there for the foreseeable future, and it also means that they're people who are more integrated into the team and work on a product over the long haul. It's not just like, oh, we need some dude for I don't know, like 6 months on this one
Sure. But
project, and
so
then
but what do you mean? So are they getting to stay home in Latin America, or are they trying to come to the States or Canada?
no, I would say most of them are happy to stay at home. It's kind of a new thing. I mean, traditionally, it's always been like, oh, I want to go to the US or Canada. There's still some people who want to do that, but a ton of them are very happy staying in Mexico because the salaries that these US companies are paying is like for Mexico, it's really good. And
Mhm.
you get all the benefits of staying in Mexico where you're from, right? So like
For
everything's
sure.
cheap.
And then so how does that work from like an organizational perspective where um like is that US company, are they opening like a Mexican subsidiary and like having employees there? Like whose payroll are they on? Are they, you know what I mean? If
Oh
they
yeah,
are
yeah.
in fact full-time employees.
Yeah, most of the time the companies are doing actually they're basically just paying them. I mean the term I guess would be as contractors, like from a legal standpoint.
Okay.
Even though they're not being paid, even though they're working indefinitely, they just send them X amount of dollars per month, and then the person in Latin America operates as a like mini business, like a one man shop, and does all their taxes,
Hmm.
all that
And
stuff.
so they're in charge of doing their own. Like, do you help them like open a Stripe account, or you just make sure they have like a local bank account in their local currency, or how do they typically get paid, the contractors?
Oh yeah, I mean we actually don't help them much in that domain. I mean most people like especially like software engineers like are usually pretty well set up in terms of having like bank account and whatnot. We've actually partnered with a company called Deal, which is a company that does international payroll. So if a company like a US client was like, I don't know how to pay these guys, what we would do, like Deal would Deal is just like a company where like, an intermediary. So, you can send them the money and then they'll send it over. But we have other clients that use TransferWise or Payoneer or like any other number of these like international
Right, right, right.
money sending.
Right, right. So basically, as long as the employee is in a country that is TransferWise or Payoneer, which
Yep.
is pretty much everyone, then
Yep.
you're good.
Yep. Yeah. It's super easy. And yeah, I mean, we had some like basically the U.S. doesn't care that much because these people are outside the U.S. so they're not going to be taxed anyway. They're non-Americans, and so and then the local countries are fine because then the person pays their local tax as if they were a sole proprietor.
Hmm. And do you still help people with TNs and H1Bs, or HBs, whatever,
Oh yeah.
or is it like everything like purely like contract now?
So some people, honestly, I mean, first of all, H1Bs, I don't really touch them because they're massive pain in the
It's
ass.
tough. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, yeah. TNs, if a client came to me and was like, "Hey, we want to hire some people who and just bring them to the U.S. on a TN," I would be open to talking about it. But it's just become so much easier to do remote because like it may it's I would say most people by default want to stay in their country as long as they get paid a good amount of money. And so it's just easier as far as like having candidates, right? There are way more candidates who want to work remote now than candidates who want a TN and move to the US.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, no, that's cool. But and just to move on, because I am
Yeah.
kind of curious actually about the TN, because I do know what it is. It's basically something that's sort of part of the NAFTA program, the North America Free Trade Agreement, where the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, they have this sort of trilateral agreement, and it helps people get jobs in the other country, like under a TN visa. So we have basically our own, trilateral visa scheme, and it might even extend to some other things. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people I know have used it to use
Yep.
this TN visa to go work on Wall Street, or to go work for a tech company in San Francisco. Canadian friends of mine. So,
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
and, and so it's kind of interesting. Like, do Mexicans have the same access that Canadians have, or is there a slightly different? Is it like different for every like combination of countries? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
Mexico to
yeah, yeah.
Canada, Mexico to
So I can speak for going into the US. So when I was in New York as a recruiter, yeah, the TN visa was known as like the Canadian visa.
right.
Because basically, if you came across a Canadian in New York working there, it's almost 100% chance they'd be on this.
Hmm.
The Mexican visa, the Mexican TN visa is basically the same. Um, the only difference is that in order to get it, the Mexican national needs to go back to Mexico and go to a U.S. consulate to get it. Whereas the Canadian can literally walk through, like in the immigration, and say, I'm applying for a TN visa. And they'll take you into like one of their little rooms and talk to you for 5 minutes and give it to you.
Hmm.
The reason why is because if you were refused the visa as a Canadian, you could still just, well, actually, no, because in Canada, almost always their American immigration is at the Canadian airport, right? So, like,
Correct.
you're basically, if you get refused, you're still in Canada. Whereas in Mexico, you would have to fly to the US. And if you were refused there, then you would be potentially in some kind of like visa limbo. So, but otherwise, it is the same. It is the same visa. It's for the same jobs. It works in exactly the same way.
No, that's pretty cool. I think yeah, Mexicans definitely have an advantage in the North American market because of that. They also have visa-free access to Canada
Yep.
as a tourist visa, so they kind of definitely have a little bit more mobility in it. So it definitely makes sense to hire from there. I have um, some buddies based out of Guadalajara, American guys, and they have like a big e-commerce company. Um, and yeah, they've basically staffed their whole team with people in Mexico. Sorry, I guess that's unrelated because they're not even doing the TN
Well,
scheme
they're just
stuff.
hiring locally.
But yeah, I think yeah, just maybe use it as a bit of a segue to talk about some of the trends we're seeing in remote and how a lot of these jobs are going to Latin America and what you're seeing.
Yeah. So I think what basically the way I look at it is it's so in the past, like, since COVID, there's been all these phases. Like, obviously, the first phase was, people are forced to work remotely and work from home. And then most software companies certainly did this and were like, oh, people like to work from home at least more than like trudging into the office. And people were just as productive and we don't have to spend all this money on office space. So let's keep it remote. Then the next level is we're always having a hard time finding software engineers and we're remote. So let's start expanding it to software engineers in other parts of the US. And then it was like, all right, well, if we're doing that, why don't we just start hiring people as long as the time zone is kind of the same, which is one of
Hmm.
the sort of obstacles, which means that Latin America is sort of like prime for this. Let's let's hire people all over Latin America, and then I think the next phase will be kind of like what your friends in Guadalajara are doing is essentially like, we don't need to just hire software engineers. Like, we already have a complete setup to hire people anywhere in Latin America. And we hire software engineers there. So let's do, like, I don't know, email marketing managers and SEO people and data analysts and, customer success people and,
Right.
all this kind of stuff. So I think it'll keep on growing. I mean, certainly the costs or difference is significant. And so, as long as they can do the work, it should be kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, so let's talk a bit about cost. That's got to be the main reason and driver behind a lot of this.
Yeah.
How much cheaper is it to hire from Latin America?
Yeah, so basically, there's a few factors. We can start with software engineers. Um, the my rule of thumb is usually you're looking at around a third of the cost. Slightly depends on the level of experience and things like that. But you can expect that somebody who makes 150K in the US will make 50K in Latin America. Um, I mean, and in Latin America, there's variations on places. So, I would say Brazil is a bit more on the expensive side.
Hmm.
Colombia and Argentina are sometimes cheaper. There's random places where, I don't know, there's stuff in the middle. Mexico is kind of average, but I would say it's about a third. The differences in other roles is substantially larger. I mean, you know, we recently placed a data analyst who was looking to make like $18,000 in a year, which is, I mean, in the US, it's like, I don't even know if you get that working at McDonald's. Um, but, you know, he was really great. And I think his equivalent in the US would probably be making like 80. Um, so but generally for software engineers, I would say it's about a third. It is changing though. Like salaries in Latin America are going up substantially, especially software engineers, as more U.S. companies kind of start recruiting down here.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have an offer out right now for a guy with 10 years of experience, actually in Guadalajara, for $150,000 per year, which is quite high for a Mexican software engineering role. And like, hopefully he'll take it. But again, you can imagine for him, I mean, making 150K in Guadalajara, like you're a king.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, yeah. So things are changing, but it's still about, I would say on average, about a third.
Okay. If you don't mind, I would enjoy going into a bit more detail on this because I think sometimes this is information that's hard to get.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go peel too deep, but okay. So let's say a American JavaScript developer, basically like the most generic software developer
Yeah.
with 3 to 5 years experience, full stack JavaScript. How much are they making in the States?
So I would assume I'm gonna say like New York, like for New York, or which I think would apply in California as well, which is sort of on the higher end. So I'd say like somebody for 3 to 5 years, you're probably looking at like 140, 150K per year. Um, Obviously, salaries have gone up substantially. New York City and like the West Coast have very high salaries. But yeah, I would say that's about right, about 140, 150K.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you think on the like in middle America it'd be a little bit less than that,
Yeah.
120,
Yeah, I
100,
think you probably like one like
like in Nashville.
15. Yeah, like if you're in Kansas City or something, maybe like 115, 130. Although there's weird shit going on there too, because you got all these remote people showing up there. You know what I mean? There's like remote jobs from, like Airbnb, for instance, just announced they're basically fully remote on their for their
I
software
saw that.
engineering. So, now you're gonna have Airbnb, people in Nashville being like, oh, I'm gonna go apply to Airbnb. However, you're right. It is about like there's a little like it's a little bit less, it's probably like 115 to 130, let's say.
Okay. Yeah, and I think, especially in Silicon Valley, that could even go higher than 150.
Absolutely. If you factor in stock options or RSUs, and like if you look at the full package, it can get really crazy. And if you look at FANG companies, so like the big tech companies, they are also. I mean, there are some numbers that go way up into the 200s for
Mm-hmm.
people with those years of experience.
For sure. And maybe we could circle back to that, talking about salary packages and about how, basically a lot of the total compensation doesn't actually come in the form of salary these days. It'll
Correct.
come in the form of RSUs and bonus and things like that. And I think what's actually interesting about that topic is how for, I think really all contractors and especially contractors in Latin America, they're kind of going to see a different percentage, a different sort of breakdown where they don't really have access to the equity and the stocks and that sort of thing where, they'll get the salary, but then they might not, and maybe they'll get the bonus, but they probably aren't going to get the RSUs and the vesting stocks. And there's just a whole bunch of different like financial instruments that are used these days.
Correct. Although that is actually changing a little bit as well. We're starting to see U.S. companies offer stock options to people in Latin America who are even working. I mean, there are people it's for people who are working, full time indefinitely, but there are packages that are involving some kind of stock option. Although traditionally, your average Latin American developer would never imagine getting something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's just say you're making like one between 120 and 150 or
Yeah.
even 200 in the States. So let's just call it 150 in the States. You said it'd be around maybe 50 in Mexico. What is, I mean, people are kind of from everywhere, but I've definitely heard of a lot of developers from Argentina. I guess kind of every country, if you had to go around, like, yeah, just one more time in more detail. So
Yeah.
Mexico, maybe 50K a year. What's Colombia? What might they
Yeah.
make per year?
So I would say, let's see. Let's look at like if we look at like let's say somebody who's a bit on the higher end of that spectrum, like a 5 to 6 year, like a sort of someone who's beginning to be like considered a senior software engineer,
Okay.
someone who would be making like 160 plus K in the US or more. In Mexico, I would say someone like that would be probably in the like around maybe 70 ish. There's a couple of other little factors to take into account that if the person has been working for like if the person has worked at all in like another tech startup, even if it's a local tech startup that has gotten some funding, there might be an idea they might sort of be consider or like they'll consider themselves to be in like a higher salary band and might ask for more. But
Mhm.
let's say in Mexico, the average premium would be about 70. I would say in Brazil, you'd probably find people like maybe more in like the 85-ish range. Um, then, yeah, I mean, I think it would be probably a bit cheaper in Peru or Ecuador, where there are not as many opportunities. So maybe like kind of more in the like 60, 65. Um, but it's all kind. There's a bit of a common out. Like it's kind of everybody's kind of similar.
Okay, it's all kind of similar.
Yeah, I mean, there's not like one country where it's like, oh my god, everybody's so cheap. Everything's kind of, you know what I mean? Everybody's kind of,
Honduras.
yeah, exactly. Honduras, like it's for whatever reason. But yeah, there's a little bit of a there's other factors that are like that like harmonize salaries. Whereas, for instance, there's a lot of big companies like Latin American companies that hire across all these countries, and so kind of like make salary bands sort of the same.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And then so I'm kind of curious where, because it is sort of like a two-sided marketplace where you're managing.
Yep.
You have, the companies on one side, and you have the developers or engineers on the other. Where is the supply demand imbalance? Are there more companies looking for engineers, or are there more engineers looking for companies?
So when we're talking about experienced engineers, there's more demand. They're like if I can find a software engineer with at least 5 years of experience who speaks English well and presents well, like I can put this person in a lot of spots. However, in other roles, there might be more supply. Like in the entry level world, there are a lot of, especially, I mean, in Latin America, word has gotten around that, if you want to actually make some money, become a software engineer. So there are a lot of people doing it. So there's a lot of noise. So there's a bit of, but that's the same kind of imbalance that you have a bit in the US and Canada as well. Right now, though, yeah, in the world I operate in, it's usually much harder just to find the supply, the talent.
Hmm. That's good. Good for
Yeah,
everyone to know.
it's a good market. I mean, for now, we'll see. I don't know, like with what's going on with the stocks and whatnot. We'll see. But for the moment, yeah, I'm pretty optimistic, and I don't think it's gonna. At one point, I thought it was gonna turn back because of COVID, and I don't. I don't like. I don't think it's gonna come. I don't think people are gonna go back to the office 100%. I think it's basically a new setup.
Yeah, for sure. This will keep going. I mean, salaries might compress a little bit
Yeah.
over who knows, but I mean, there will continue being a market for this for sure. How long have you been doing it, by the way?
So I was been a recruiter. I mean, we're really going on like a decade now. I was a recruiter for like in a recruiting agency in New York, like a tech recruiter, and then I branched out on my own a few years after that. But I was just doing like local New York City recruiting,
Mm-hmm.
you know, tech startups, hiring developers, all in the local sort of tri-state market. And yeah, and only later on it was like, oh, Latin American could be a thing. And I already spoke Spanish, so there was like an advantage I had there. So I was like, oh, maybe I should go down. And I kind of wanted to leave New York anyway. So yeah.
Got it. So how did Latin America sort of become a thing in your life? How did you learn Spanish?
Yeah. So how did I learn it? After college, I did, I guess, what a lot of people do, like go down, try to become an English teacher, in Argentina or whatever. And it's funny because like I remember the salary they wanted to pay me like what the equivalent, I think it was like $2 an hour or something like that. It was like ridiculous. But so I wasn't an English teacher, but I hung out there for like 6 months and it was amazing, right? It was like, as you can imagine, 22 years old in Buenos Aires. It was cool. And I was lucky enough that I was not really hanging around with any other gringos. And so I just started picking it up, and I grew up speaking French and English, so it's close enough to French. It was pretty, sort of, there's some intuitiveness there. And then later on, I lived for about 8 months. I lived in Venezuela in 2009, and worked mostly in Spanish, so that helped. I have had various girlfriends who did not speak English. That often helps. I'm married now to a Colombian. So basically Spanish kind of existed around me for a long time. And yeah, it's, it's very practical language to know, even if you live in the US. And so I thought it was an advantage too. I was like, oh, cool. Like I can come down here and I can be like the gringo that speaks Spanish. So kind of have that bridge, and yeah, start the business that way.
That's awesome, man. So you spent a lot of time in Mexico and Colombia. I think I also read in Venezuela.
Yeah. I lived there for that's about 8 months. It was not as big of a shit show as it is now. Just like as a heads up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was working there actually.
That's awesome, man. So you when you left New York behind, it's just been all Latin America.
Yeah. I mean, I really like. I mean, I just have a soft spot for Latin America. It's like I guess there's a lot of different things I like about it. Not to get into too many sort of generic statements about a gigantic place. But one thing that is nice about Latin America compared to being like an expat in Asia, for instance, is you can integrate into this society a lot easier. I mean, like, the language barrier is much lower. I think culturally it's much closer. And so it's just easier to be a part of the living there. You're not like just someone who's separated out, hanging out with other expats, doing expat things. You can be a bit more integrated. Yeah, that's kind of, I mean, that's in general what I enjoy about it. And I mean, I don't know if I'm going to live here in Latin America forever, but definitely come back very regularly if I leave. And yeah, I mean, I mean, every country I've been to in Latin America has been pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean, well, you've been to some good ones, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, definitely. I would say, yeah. I mean, it kind of depends on what you want in your, like, what you want to do in your life. But like, if I was a single guy again, I'd probably be in Brazil a bit more than in Mexico, for instance. But overall, it's yeah, it's fun and people, it's cool. I don't know, like I just have to get used to like the annoying stuff, like people flaking all the time and whatnot. But outside of that, it's fine.
No, that's awesome. And where are you? So I know you're half French.
Yeah.
Were you born in the States or in France?
So I was born in France. I was born and raised in France. So I basically moved to the U.S. for university. I did this thing in France called the baccalaureate. Um,
IB.
so actually, I did the French baccalaureate. The IB is
Ah,
the international baccalaureate.
okay, okay.
Um, and so yeah, I did the Beck and then left, and I come back from time to time. But my high school friends are all still in France, and I have some family there. But overall, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot more opportunity in the U.S. And honestly, you make a lot more money in the U.S. I mean, European salaries are very low compared to the U.S. when you look at them.
They are. They definitely are, especially if you look at somewhere like Portugal. Um,
Yeah.
and you know what? That's kind of maybe an interesting topic. Is I'm just sort of thinking about this now, but it must be almost at the point where, with some of the numbers we're saying, some Latin American salaries are catching up or caught up
Yes.
to European salaries.
Yes, absolutely. I actually was tweeting about this recently. I tweeted something like do you want to have like a crappy Latin American salary and pay European prices? You should go to Spain. Because Spain is I guess Portugal and Spain in particular have very low salaries. But yeah, like it's definitely getting to a point where if you are, if you play your cards right as a Mexican software engineer and staying in Mexico, you actually do way better than a Spanish software engineer living and working in Spain. Like
For the
substantially
time
better.
zone,
Yeah. And like,
cultural similarity,
yeah,
English
yeah, no,
level.
it's really an interesting, it's a really interesting like phenomenon that's happening. And I actually think that we could probably start poaching Spanish developers who want to work for U.S. companies, as long as they're okay with like the time zone difference. Um, because you have Spanish developers, like I've seen Spanish side, like software engineers with like 10 years of experience making like 80,000 euros a year, whereas in the U.S. they would be making like 350, $400,000. You know what I mean? Like the differences get really crazy, especially at the senior level.
Because
And
they just in Europe, they don't have this idea of like high salaries
yeah,
where it just really has like a ceiling, I feel, except maybe in like, the UK or maybe Paris. But for the most
yeah,
of Europe, like it's just weird for people over there to like make more than 4,000 euros a month, I
yeah.
feel.
No, you're right. You're right. It's super rare to find people who even make that. Yeah, you have to go into like finance in London or finance maybe in like Frankfurt or something like that to start seeing people making a lot.
Hmm.
Most people, or people who work for like U.S. companies, as more like an expat thing. But no, people make very little in the U.S. Honestly, my sort of like my life philosophy around this is make like whatever you do, try to make your revenue center in the United States, and then go somewhere else, and you can go live nicely, but like make the money in the U.S. Um, and that's what people here in Latin America are doing. These software engineers, like, they're making like $80,000 a year, and they live in like I know a bunch of people who live in Colima, which you probably know it's close to Guadalajara.
Hmm.
I don't know how much it costs there, but I'm sure it's nothing to live there.
Yeah,
If you
it's
have
very cheap.
80K, like you could probably buy like a neighborhood. Um, so those people are living well, and so I feel like that's the right attitude. I mean, that's kind of my philosophy too. Like I might move to Spain, as I was telling you. If I do, I'm definitely gonna like separate out, like, the business will be in the US, the money will be made in the US, and then, I'll give myself a very small salary. just to cover
Hmm.
expenses.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't want to make money in Spain. I mean, like it's the salary, like it's everything is so low.
Yeah, I mean, make your money in the States and spend pesos, live in Latin
Yeah,
America. It's so obvious. I don't even typically state it every episode of the podcast, or but it bears repeating. I mean,
yeah, yeah. No, it's wild. And I mean, I went back to New York, I guess, late last year, and like I've gotten to the point now where I'm used to Mexican pesos enough so that I can like I know how much you have an intuitive feel for like this is only 200 pesos, this is like 300 pesos, and I started
mhm.
converting in my head, and it was like holy shit, like if I was in Mexico right now with the amount of money I just dropped on these drinks, I could have like had like an open bar for an hour, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the constant. That's like the dilemma that uh, like a digital nomad gets into that's been doing it for a couple of years, where they every time they go home, everything's expensive, and
Yeah.
they're like, of course I don't live here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's kind of it's a little wild, but yeah, I mean, I guess everybody you talk to is kind of has the same philosophy. But yes, like
Mhm.
just make sure that you like make your revenue in the United States and then go because that is really the
And
beauty
then
of the
go
U.S. It's
learn
a
salsa in Cali.
Cali. Yeah, exactly, exactly,
I
and
mean, literally in the 4 hour work week, Tim went to Argentina. He went to Buenos Aires. He learned tango.
yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it's and I mean, and like I don't know, I think you can get a pretty decent apartment in Cali, like a one bedroom. I think for like 300, $400 a month, like a nice one.
hmm, sounds about right. Have you done
Yeah,
anything with the Colombian residency? You told me offline you were doing Mexican. Are you doing
yeah,
Colombian too?
no, that's a good question. No, because I have no plans on living in Colombia now. So I'm married to a Colombian, so I assume I would be able to get residency pretty easily if I wanted to.
Hmm.
Um, the Mexican one was the one that that's the one I've been doing since 2018 or 2019, um, with the temporary one, and
Hmm.
uh, I'm probably going to keep on doing it because as far as I know, they do not ask for any proof that you're actually in Mexico while you're getting this residency. Um, so I'm just going to keep on doing it no matter where I live because I'd like to have at least the permanent residency kind of in my back pocket as an option if I ever want to go back to Mexico.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, Mexico is definitely a no-brainer, and I believe you're right that there's no physical presence requirements. Just make sure you renew it
Yeah,
a little bit in excess of the expiration, and after 4 years of temp, that'll convert to permanent. So
yeah,
sounds like you're getting there.
yeah. I did. I had my appointment there on. It was only like a week ago, like April 23rd. I went, and I use a lawyer, which I highly recommend. They're
Hmm.
not that expensive, and they do like take care of all the crap that you have to deal with. Yeah, literally, I printed out some bank statements, and I gave him my old card, and that's it. Then he like did some stuff, and I went and took a photo for the new card, and that's that's it. Like, and this is my last go. Next year, I get the permanent. And then you can the following year, if you want to, you can go to you can become a Mexican citizen. Although there are some, I think there are some
Physical presence.
physical presence requirement to be a citizen. I don't think I'm going to become a citizen because I already have French. I don't really need a second passport, but it's totally doable.
Yeah, I think the presence requirements, if I'm remembering correctly, it's just in the last year or two
Yeah,
prior to the naturalization.
yeah, I think you're right. So basically, if someone wanted to do this, they could just become a permanent resident and then like do whatever. And then when
Let
they're
the clock
planning on,
tick for like 3.5 years.
yeah,
And then
and come
three and a
back.
half years in, it's like, hey, if I spend like 1 year in Mexico, like I can become Mexican.
Yeah.
Like, should we go through with this?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But the cool part is, I think once you get the permanent one, then you're kind of set. You can, then you don't have to renew anything,
Hmm.
and then you can make your decision. So that's where I'm at. I'll just keep this. I don't know if I'll ever like permanently live in Mexico, but why not if I can get it.
No, dude, you're definitely following a lot of the philosophy that we preach here at My Latin Life. It's important to have plan Bs, have options,
Yeah,
especially when there's just no downside to something with no physical presence requirements. You just sort of like make
yeah,
sure to renew this piece of paper. You never need to even show up anywhere. So it makes
yeah.
me think you should probably do the Mexican, or sorry, the Colombian one as well, because you probably get that very easily. Just the same thing. Just you probably don't need to make an investment or anything.
Yeah,
Like
that's a good point. I mean,
you
there's
can
true.
just
There's
get it,
no
and
there's no
then
harm in just
yeah, and as long as you spend less than 6 months a year,
yeah.
you should be fine from a tax perspective. And then it's still what I've heard is that Colombia is actually quite good about the physical presence when it comes to naturalization. So people, I've heard anecdotally that you can naturalize as Colombian having not spent all that much time on the ground, as long as
Mm.
you've followed the processes, and you've had the residency for X number of years.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Actually, I don't see why not. Yeah, it could be like I'm sure we just have to do a bunch of random paperwork and with the wife and just get it
Hmm.
done. But why? Yeah, why not? That I can just have that too. I never really thought about it, but like, yeah, it could also be good if like we ever want to live here for more than I don't know 3 months. Um, yeah,
Exactly, and
no,
it's the
totally.
type of thing you want to do in advance for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Yeah, I'll keep that. I did not consider it, but I will keep it. I will keep it in mind.
And yeah, did you if you do things right, who knows if you move to Spain or whatever, but your kids could have like 3, 4 passports, maybe
There
even
are a lot
5
of
if you do it
passport
right.
opportunities. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because like one of the things is one of the reasons we go to Spain is because my Spain. If you're a Latin American citizen, like a citizen of any Latin American country,
Hmm.
if you are a resident of Spain for 2 years, you can then apply to get Spanish citizenship.
I've seen that.
It's very fast, and so it would be cool for her to get it that to get Spanish, because the Colombian passport is very annoying for like just going places. There's always a lot of visas and stuff that are required, and don't particularly want her to have U.S. citizenship because of all the tax implications that involves. Um, and so Spanish would be great. So that's yeah. So we have our kids would be like yeah, they could be like French, Spanish, Colombian,
Maybe
U.S.
Mexican.
Yeah, throw in Mexico. I mean, at that point, it becomes ridiculous. It's basically all you do is renew passports. Like that's what you do all year. But
I
yeah,
have a little insider theory here, actually, where um, I think the best form of being an American is actually not being born in the United States. And what I mean by that is basically getting American citizenship by descent, through your
yeah,
parents, but not actually being born there. And I can tell you one immediate benefit to that,
yeah,
where if you're not born in the US, then it won't say on your driver's license or on your this or that document that you're American. Your Americanness is not as prominent. And as we know, it's like difficult for Americans to open certain bank accounts in different countries, to open certain crypto accounts. There's just certain there's a lot of services, of course, that Americans have access to, but there's a lot that they don't, specifically for being American, largely due to like the tax compliances on the back end and stuff. But if you could be American but just not have it like stated, you can sort of like slide by on a couple things a little easier.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like when I use my like on my French passport, there's zero indication that I'm American. There would be no way for anybody to even
Hmm.
assume because I was born in France, um, and so yeah, that's true. Like if there wouldn't be any questions asked um, on that
Hmm.
on that front. Um, so yeah, actually, I didn't think about that, but you're right. Like there's some like I don't have people don't have to know at all that I'm American from looking at my background or looking at a
Hmm.
piece of ID.
Yeah, so something to just consider for the listeners, because many of whom are American, that actually, like, you'll still be able to give your American citizenship to your kids, but if they were born in Mexico or somewhere else, not only would they be dual citizens, um, but pretty much every country in Latin America has, birthright citizenship. If
Yeah,
you're born there, you become a citizen. But then it wouldn't say the U.S. necessarily on their documents, and it would make certain things easier. Um, and the amount of things that makes easier it would change over time. So it's hard to look at it right now and be like, oh, like cool, like the visa to Iran is harder, like whatever. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
but that scale of uh you know pros and cons could change over time. So anyway, kind of a random aside there, but I hopefully that's helpful for some people.
yeah. I'd say it was helpful for me. I didn't really think about it.
Hmm. I thought, we're getting near the hour mark, so you've been generous with your time. I thought we could just talk a little bit more about sort of tech in Latin America, and digital nomad stuff in Latin America.
Yeah,
Um, so what like I we talk a lot about the digital nomad hubs in Latin America, and those do not necessarily overlap with the tech hubs in Latin America. So you must be probably more familiar than most people with the tech hubs, because I imagine to some extent you're sourcing your developer talent from the tech hubs. So what would those
yeah,
be in Latin America? Guadalajara comes up a lot.
yeah,
Sao Paulo comes up a lot.
yeah.
What else?
So I would say in Mexico, you have I mean, yeah, Guadalajara is probably the most prominent one, if only because it's just like the tech center. Um, Monterrey has a fairly significant tech presence
Mm,
as well, and
mm,
I know that's not particular digital nomad hub. But and then Mexico City obviously has a lot of people, with secondary cities being like Querétaro has a sizable presence. Merida is building. San Luis Potosi has a few. And then outside of Mexico, yeah, like Sao Paulo in Brazil is I mean, obviously it's big in like every way, but it's a huge tech center. Um, and then yeah, I mean, and then Colombia is really pretty evenly divided between Medellin and Bogota. Like where I'm at right now in Cali is not. I mean, there are some developers, but it's not huge.
mhm.
And yeah, I mean, then outside of that, most of the other countries in Latin America are such that the biggest city is the capital city. Like, there's really only one major city. Like, Buenos Aires is like the place in Argentina, Santiago in Chile, Lima in Peru. I mean, there are other cities, but it's very centralized. So in those cities, it's really like, all right, the tech is there because just everybody
Right,
is
right, right.
there.
Do you keep up with like the tech in Latin America scene? Like who's raising money? Who are the big VCs? The rounds? I mean, there's
Yeah,
like the SoftBank Latin America Fund. What companies are they investing in? Things like that.
yeah. I keep an eye on that. That certainly affects the talent market a lot. There have been a lot of very large fundraisers for tech companies here in Latin America, especially in the fintech world.
Hmm.
I mean, the ones that people know about the most are probably like,
Nubank.
yeah, Nubank is huge. In the crypto space, there's Bitso in Mexico, which is enormous.
Hmm.
Uh, Kavak, which is they're actually in like the car, like used car space,
Hmm.
but also raised a ton of money. Credit Justo, which is like small business loans. Um, there's an incredible amount of fintech, mostly because there's this huge opportunity, right? Like Latin America is historically not don't have the same access to financial products, and so there's a lot of options. But yeah, I keep an eye on him, and in fact, that's one of the reasons why developer numbers have like salaries have gone up so much too, because they've raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and so all that most of that money goes into salaries and hiring people.
Hmm. Yeah, it's something that I actually want to try to get some more guests on that are maybe involved in the LatAm startup ecosystem, either some VCs or people like that. So
Oh
um,
yeah, I could probably connect you later if you needed some people to talk to.
yeah, I think it's exciting. I think it's important to stay abreast of what's happening in sort of like the traditional uh, financing markets, VC and PE in Latin America, and seeing sort of what the dynamic is in Latin America. Because that's kind of maybe you have developers who are in that situation where it's like, oh, I got an offer from Nubank and I can stay here, or I got an offer from like a U.S. contractor. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah,
they might actually have sort of those dynamics happening.
yeah, no, it happens all the time. I was trying to poach people from Nubank, and it's been impossible because they like were about to IPO, and then they did IPO, and then everyone's like, "No, I want to like I'm have all these stock, like all these RSUs, and like blah blah blah." And so no, it's the same problems that you have trying to poach somebody from Facebook or a big tech company in the U.S. Um,
Interesting.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of begs the question. I mean, how do you source your developers? Because that definitely seems like the key part of the business model is there's basically unlimited companies at some price who want developer talent. You know what I mean? If it's not 100 an hour, it's 80 an hour, or it's 50 an
Yeah.
hour. But it's really all about you to like find like vetted candidates that can get the work done and like answer emails. How do you find people? Do you put up job postings on University of Mexico City
Yeah,
job? You know
yeah,
what I mean? How do you like
yeah.
what do people do?
So we do a few things. We don't really do too many job postings because you get a lot of random people who answer those, so you have to sift through a lot. We do two ways. So we do the most classic way, which is LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has a bunch of different like expensive products that you can buy, licenses to use, like
Hmm.
LinkedIn Recruiter. So
Hmm.
we'll use that to a degree. And then the other thing we do as well is we like part of the sort of Gringo Jobs community, which you can mostly see on Twitter, but kind of exists in general, is also a way for us to find people. So we often have people who will pop out of the woodwork every week, being like, "Hey, I follow you on this and that. I'm looking for a new job, or at least I've started looking for a new job. Like, do you have any?" Um, you have anything, or we have a referral program so that people will send us their friends. That works decently well as well. So I think the right way to like a healthy recruiting agency is one that has many different source like channels to bring in people. They are too dependent on one. They are at a very high risk.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. I think if we were recruiting for other types of roles, we would do it in different ways. Like if you're recruiting for like lower, like more junior roles or things like that, maybe we'd put up a job ad and we'd get a bunch of people, and we would have to like massively filter them. But we're working with more seniors, so it's a little bit like say what you would call like a higher touch, so to speak, like people who are a bit more.
Hmm.
Yeah, like not as many people. We go out and find them.
And do you put them through HackerRank or anything first, or do you just leave it up to the companies to do it?
Yeah, we right now we don't do any HackerRank stuff because well, there's a few reasons. One, I'm not a developer. I have no ability to sort of like to filter people. Obviously, HackerRank we could kind of automate the process. But what we found is that it's sometimes the HackerRank is good for that very first level filter where like, does the person even have a clue of what they're doing or not?
Okay.
It doesn't really work as well for like, is this person good enough for me to hire them? And so most companies will still want to take a person through their own process. And so in our mind, we're sort of like, well, if the person has, if their background checks out, like, and they, you know, they have an interest, like they have relevant experience, they're not too jumpy, they speak English well enough, you know, all that kind of stuff, you know, we'll send the person over and it's more than likely that the company will take them through their recruiting process. And so we decided that like HackerRank, at least for now, it doesn't make that much sense.
Okay. Makes sense. Um, yeah, it's interesting. Okay. One more random question.
Yeah, sure.
Uh, there's been a big, sort of, it's funny. It's like a funny thing, but like a huge surge of people just talking about like stacking like several remote jobs. And I was just
Oh, yeah.
curious, like what can you tell the world about people stacking like two, three, four remote jobs? And it's funny.
Yeah. No, I've definitely heard. This is like it's like the urban legends of the recruiting world, where yeah, people are like, yeah, my job's so easy that I can do this, and I got like two others like it, and I make you know like 900K a year when you add up all the salaries. Um, yeah, I mean, I mean, I mean, yeah, there's tons of jobs that are really stupid out there that aren't that hard. And, you know, if you don't have that many meetings, which I think are the main thing that eats
Hmm.
up, that makes it difficult. If you're in a company that doesn't have that many meetings, yeah, you can totally do, I mean, yeah, you can do it. And I do definitely remote work has made that kind of thing easier as well. You know, you just need to, I mean, I'm all for it if you can make it happen. Like, do it. It's yeah, as
Yeah,
like choose a company that has.
there's no right answer. It was more just
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I
it's
think
been
it's
funny to
awesome if
read
people
about
can do it.
on Reddit.
Yeah,
So what do you think is sort of like this is sort of a generic question, but like the future of remote work? I think like the standard intuitive narrative would just be that, you know, we're heading into a period of increased global competition where these high Western salaries are just going to have to come down because they can be outsourced. Um, and so we'll just basically have a more even playing field, which isn't necessarily a bad thing at all.
yeah,
Um, I mean, what else could you speak to sort of like the future of how a lot of this is going to play out in terms of outsourcing to Latin America, but then also just sort of like a larger remote job market where tasks are being, you know, allocated to people in different
yeah,
geographics.
yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I would say, yeah, there's a few. I'll try to come up with something that's not like just completely uh, just generic. Because yeah, I mean, there'll be more. There will be more. Remote work will continue. My theory is at least there's a lot of overpaid people in the United States, especially. Obviously, there are engineers who are working on really advanced stuff that you know probably are generating 50 times more or 100 times more value than what their salary is. But there are a lot of other types of engineers where, like, yeah, the job is kind of basic, and it's pretty straightforward. Um, and I was listening to a podcast recently where they're kind of like comparing the develop like the way software is developed in the same way as manufacturing is developed, and over time, manufacturing became more standardized. A lot of the tasks that might have been more advanced ended up becoming more basic. And then also, um, uh, computers made manufacturing much easier and more streamlined. And so
Right. So
you have,
basically, even basic developer tasks are going to get automated. You're also seeing like no code or low code
yeah,
platforms, and so there is sort of a narrative that a lot of these, or that like really like the software developer jobs that'll exist in the future are just going to be, I don't know, man. They're just going to be like a lot more complicated, and they're going to require a pretty high level of sophistication.
yeah, that's exactly right. Like there should be kind of more of that split. And then I don't know what will happen to the other jobs. They might get automated out. There could also be other jobs that we don't know about that will be needed. That's another reason why there's this sort of like potential unlimited need for software engineers, which is the fact that there is a new language, a new technology that gets created every 2 or 3 years suddenly requires like this, massive amount of talent to work on it. So like, I don't know what's the latest, like a Solidity developer, right? So if you're doing like
Hmm.
Web3 stuff, right? Like now, like, 6 years ago, nobody knew what it was. Now, everybody's clamoring for one. And presumably in 3 more years, there'll be like some other thing. So that's another factor that would make me think that there's kind of this unlimited, amount of demand. However, there will be things that will be automated out. Remote work is going to probably bring things down. Like, I mean, especially if you're not, if you're building something that's not like that high tech, like if you're an e-commerce company or something, you don't need like, you don't need like Stephen Hawking on your team. You know what I mean? Like you can basically build your thing with a lot of out of the box stuff. Maybe a developer here or there to help out with some stuff, but
Hmm.
not like nothing crazy. Um, so that I think those jobs, like I think those companies, it's like why are they hiring super expensive people on site in the U.S.?
Hmm. Yeah, well, I read your article, "How to Get the Gringo Job," which I thought
Oh.
was a great title, and I read through sort of the bullet points, and it um, definitely seemed on point, lined up with my experience. Do a coding boot camp, and then after, the big thing is like, what do you do after the coding boot camp? A job at an agency is actually a great step. An
Yeah,
agency is basically like a company that does software work for other companies. And so, you might be working on the website for like a, car dealership or something. But anyway, so you get a job at an agency. And then after that, and basically just start building your portfolio, doing side projects, starting getting freelance work for US clients, sort of get used to dealing with US clients. And then you try to go for like a big job, or really just a bigger freelance gig.
yeah. Well, then you can do whatever you like. Yeah,
Yeah.
the idea is that an agency. I mean, this is true not just for software engineers. It's kind of true for almost every job. Like agencies are good because agencies like usually will hire you with no experience or very little experience, and they have they will train you up.
Hmm.
And then once you've done some time there, you'll have some professional experience, some portfolio or whatever, and then yeah, then you could maybe if you want to do freelancing, you could do that. If you want to go work in a product focused company, you could do that. It's doubly beneficial for somebody from Mexico or from Latin America because they also get to learn English,
Hmm.
um, which is and like learn English in a professional environment, and which is helpful instead of being thrown into like 100% U.S. company where they're the only foreigner. Usually in an agency, they're on a team with like other people from Latin America. You know,
Hmm.
so
And
yeah,
so it takes, what would you estimate if someone like really dedicated time to it? How long do you think it would take to learn how to code, to go from zero to job? I would say maybe 4 to 6 months.
yeah, I mean, I think it depends obviously on your natural capacities, but yeah, I would say like 6 months you could do it. Um, I would say the most like the successful like I've seen boot camps. Well, I mean, I've seen boot camps do like 6 weeks, which I think usually does not work. you know, up to a year, which maybe is like on the generous side. But yeah, I think you could do that. That would probably give you enough, at least enough to start, right? Because a lot of it is thinking about like, all right, what is my minimum level to be valuable to a company?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, am I good enough so that I can actually bring some level of value to a company? If you're like, you know, if you're like not, if you've had a career in the past and you're like switch, like, you know, doing a career change, another cool thing to do is to like think about, all right, I used to do this job. Maybe I can take my software engineering skills and apply it to whatever I was doing before. So like, I don't know, if you were a lawyer, like maybe there's some things specific to the legal profession that's is very old and really could use some software. And now that I know how to code and I was a lawyer in the past, I can really add a lot of value, or real estate or whatever it happens to be. That's another strategy that I think works well when you're trying to like, only when you're doing like a career change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity. And then so what like prerequisites do the Latin developers need? Do they need to have a bank account? Do they need to have a university degree or
Mm.
having graduated from a boot camp? Like what are some of the minimum requirements?
So, I mean, they need a bank account to get paid, but I'd say everybody has a bank account, at least the people I talk to. Like, I think if you're yeah, I mean, if you're I mean, I'm trying to think. Most people, I mean, I'd say I know there are a lot of people in Latin America who don't have a bank account, but the developers that I talk to, they do.
Or maybe they only have one, but it's like not international or
Yeah, they could. They might have to do a little. Maybe they have to go to their bank and be like, "Oh, I need to join, you know, open this type of account or whatever."
Mhm.
Then, as far as they don't need a university degree necessarily. They just need to know how to program. We need to figure out how they learn. So, you know, it's just like the U.S. Some people are self-taught. Some people did a coding boot camp. I don't know. Some people did a CS degree in a university. It doesn't really matter anymore because it's all remote. With the TN visa, you actually do need to prove that you have a relevant university degree,
Mhm.
but not with remote.
Pretty easy, pretty doable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's. I mean, it requires work, but it's the path is clear.
Love it. Awesome, man. Well, I think we should probably get to wrapping up the episode again. So
Cool.
the website is gringojobs.co.
Yep.
Any other information you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to connect with me personally, Twitter is probably the best. George with an S at the end. Janin, Janin. That's where I'm at the most. You could also connect, you know, if you want to hang out and speak Spanglish in Gringo with Gringo Jobs people, you can go to our Twitter is Gringo Jobs. And that's about it. Thanks for having me on. It was very cool to chat with you.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. You've been doing really well on Twitter, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, we try to make efforts to like, yeah, I mean, we try like, especially with Gringo Jobs, like to put out interesting stuff. Like it's a really combination of like you have to do some serious like thready type stuff and then memes. If you do those enough, that seems to be the winning formula.
Hmm. So you just hit 15K. I remember it was at like 14 something
Yeah.
the other day. So congrats on the
Oh, thank
round
you.
number of 15K. I feel like it's an easy follow because anyone that wants a job, just say, okay, I'll just follow this and like maybe come back to it later. So I feel like you get a lot of followers.
Yeah, we get a lot of. There's a lot of like it's mostly Latin America tech Twitter and various people like trying
Yeah,
to break in and like that kind of stuff.
love it. I need to get as involved as I can in Latin tech Twitter. So
Yeah,
perfect.
follow, come and hang out.
Awesome, George. Well, dude, thank you so much for your time. I think this business has a lot of opportunity ahead of it, and we'll continue to see success.
Cool, man. Yeah, thanks for having me, and we'll catch you soon.
Cheers, bro.
All right.